Hey, what's up? I'm Alexey Sonic Elysium, and this is the ultimate kick and bass line tutorial. In this video, I'm gonna tell you all the most important aspects of making kick and bass for psytrance music. These two sounds are very important because they make people rock the dance floors if you make it right, and now I'll tell you how to do that. So let's go. Here I've got the tracks by well-known producers, which would be our guidelines and reference examples to learn how to make these parts, which I have made myself. And I'm going to reveal you the entire process step by step. Let's have a look through what we're gonna learn. This is the finest progressive collaboration of Zeiss and Sub-6. Awesome psytrance by Electropnose and Malice in Wonderland. And some dark sound by Aja. Step by step, going from easy to hard, referring to these examples, you would gain the whole arsenal of techniques to create and edit your own sounds. Let's get started from the first example, for which I have chosen the track by Aja called Spikadelic. This guy rocks huge dance floors worldwide, so let's find out now how to make his kind of sounds. I'm gonna examine the first reference and try to make my own kick and bass referent to this. I'm gonna use the exoscope analyzer both to hear and see what's going on. I like it, but it can't match the tempo, so the picture is moving all the time, which is annoying. There's a simple way to solve this problem, and now I'll tell you the first secret. We want to see the picture matching to our beats, that's why somehow we have to tell the analyzer when to refresh. That's called synchronization. I've made a short impulse and put it on a separate track matching the kick drum. You can make the same out of any high sound, for instance a hi-hat, using a high-pass filter. Now we set the rising mode here and move the slider down to the peak level of our sync spike. And with the time knob we can zoom in to have a closer look. That means now exoscope would refresh every time the volume hits the peak level. So let's examine it now. Here's one beat of the kick drum and 3 notes of the bass. Kick drum is short and it's not overlapping with the bass at all, which is playing with the 3 identical notes. We can measure the kick length now. In 1/47, 1/16 is near 100 milliseconds. I've split up the reference kick and bass on separate tracks. Let's now have a closer look at them with the spectrum analyzer, and I like this one of the Applesoft EQ. We see here that the kick drum is starting at around 3 to 4K, here we've got the high click, and here the low thumb, which ends up at around 30 Hz. Let's pick up the similar sound referent to these values. I'll use the Sonic Academy Kick 2. For me, it's the most perfect and complete instrument for kick drums ever since the old good bassism release. I'm gonna start with the default preset now and disable the rest functions we don't need at the moment. So I'm gonna work with the pitch and amp envelopes only. I'll just leave a pinch of distortion to my taste and make it shorter. So let's find out now what is the kick drum in its essence. We can see and hear that its frequency is falling down according to this curve, which we can edit. By changing its shape, we determine how fast does the frequency fall down from high to low. And changing its depth, we are able to emphasize certain frequency bands, make it sound more resonant or flat. And with the same curve, we can edit the volume. I'm gonna disable all the extra points now, just leaving a soft release. What is really important here is that every part of this curve is matching to certain frequencies. For example, this might be 30 Hz, this is 40, 50, 60, and so on. This way, by editing the amp envelope, we can cut certain frequencies that we don't like. I'm gonna set the length a bit more than 100 milliseconds to have some extra time for the release, and have a look at the analyzer comparing our kick to the reference one. We can see here that the low thumb of the reference kick is louder than the click. We may boost the lows with an EQ, but as we know, the better initial sound is, and the least processing used is the best. Therefore, I'm gonna shape the desired waveform directly in the synth with the help of amp envelope. I'm gonna pull down this part with a high click and mids to emphasize the lows, and make a soft release. Adjust it a little bit, and compare what I've got against the reference. Sounds already quite similar. Please note that our aim is not to make an exact copy, but to learn the fundamental principles of kick and bass creation by examining these tracks. So in the meantime, I have made this kind of sound. With the help of amp envelope, I've lowered the mids here to emphasize the lower frequencies and made a soft release. The pitch one has only 2 points corresponding to the reference frequencies. Let's check out what we've got in the end. Note that there is absolutely no processing at all, no EQing, no compression, no magic button effects. This is just a pure sound of the Sonic Academy synth that sounds awesome. I advise you to take some time and repeat this exercise. Play for a while with these points and curves, watch the spectrum analyzer and listen to the difference. Let's get to the bass now. Here I've got a MIDI part of 3 identical notes. I've shortened them to avoid overlapping and have some extra time in between for smooth release tails, because zero release settings would give us unwanted clicks and artifacts. I'm gonna use Massive. We know that the basic waveform for sidetrans bassline is the sawtooth, but on every synth it sounds in a different way because it has different spectrum content. That's why I encourage you to experiment with your own favorite synthesizers. Here I've got a single low-pass filter. Massive offers us a selection of filter types, and looking ahead I've chosen the Daft mode because it would sound closer to the reference we're recreating in this example. Let's pull the resonance down and bring up the first envelope to the cutoff, tweaking it all the way up, and close the filter. And now I'm gonna add a pinch of distortion to my taste and pull down the amplifier sustain. I'll set the fixed phase here to make all the notes sound the same. The magic knobs that define the bassline character and make it sound the way we like are the cutoff, decay and sustain, so let's tweak it and have a listen to how it works out. Now I want to make a nice sharp attack. At this point everybody is looking for a magical compressor, usually asking which one to choose to emphasize the attack, to make it more punchy, or which compressor is good for basslines. None, I'm telling you. This is the secret number 2. We just need to adjust the phase position. This parameter defines the starting point, the initial transient of our note, and gives it a nice punchy click. So let's have a look at our waveform while changing the phase. That sounds good now. I want to make the final envelope refinement. There is no specific recipe, just take your time playing around with these knobs. After a bit of time and magic I have made this one. The trick is in the accurate envelopes and filter tuning. For the best results it's very helpful doing it both in the speakers and the headphones, comparing the sound to find the proper one. Let's now compare it to the reference again. We see in the reference here that second harmonic level is almost equal to the first one, the fourth and fifth are trimmed, and the overall mids are lowered. In general, speaking of the bassline EQing, usually the first two harmonics might be emphasized to add the bass, and some of the mids might be cut out to remove the mud. Let's have a listen to them. So I've lowered the mids to soften the attack, boost the lows on the second harmonic, cut out number 4 and 5 to clear mud, and boost a little in between the cuts to compensate it. So let's now compare it once again. Just wonderful. Now I'm gonna show you one more secret. When we're done with the preset adjustment and it already sounds as we want it to, it might seem to be slightly out of tune. In that case, we may attentively fine-tune the pitch in around 10-15% plus or minus. Let's try to do that comparing our sound to the reference again. This way it sounds better. Now I'm gonna match the volumes of our sounds. Commonly kick drum is the loudest instrument of the track. The bass is usually playing at the same level with the kick or a bit lower. In this example we've got a short kick that does not overlap with the bass. That's why we may align it at the same levels, making the bass loud. As we can see on the reference peak levels, the bass line is even louder a bit, so I've made it to my ear. Next I'm gonna route it into a group channel and insert a compressor to control the overall dynamics. For that I like to use the glue with a fast attack and release, slightly moving the threshold down until it starts working at the range of just a couple of decibels. As we're done with the kick and bass volume alignment, it's essential to put them into the right place of the whole mix. Usually I'm routing sounds into several group channels, drums, synth effects and so on, and keep an eye on them so that the volumes of each group channel does not exceed the volume of kick and bass group channel. I'll show it on my track called Thunderstorm. Going further to more complex issues, I'm gonna make the kick drum longer. For the second reference, I've chosen the collaboration of Electric Nose and Malice in Wonderland called Nifopo. I've heard this one on the Function 1 sound system and was greatly amazed by the very fine sound engineering at the very low end of the spectrum. So let's now have a look at it. You can hear it right away that bassline notes are now changing in volume. Ducking at the first note, it makes room for the kick drum tail, which is longer. In this example, I've just mapped the velocity to the synth amp and edited MIDI part. But that's not the only trick when we're dealing with a longer kick drum, so let's find out more. I'm gonna start with the bass. I've taken the previous patch at a starting point, blended a bit of square waveform, and edited the filter cutoff frequency and envelope to make it sound deeper as we hear it in the reference. This time we have no sharp attack, so I've turned the phase back to 0. I've also boosted the second harmonic and got rid of a muddy one number 5. Once again I've chosen the bar with distant necessary sounds. Looking at the graph now, we can see a very important thing here. The kick drum is longer, completely overlapping with the entire first note of the bass, but the low frequency tail is matching the bass perfectly. Right here we see the attack of the first note and it sounds together as one. This moment is very important because here the magic happens. And this is our secret number 4. In case, when kick and bass phase does not match, we hear something is wrong. I'm gonna demonstrate it here. For that I'm gonna use 2 identical sine waves. As we know, sine wave is the simplest sound. All other sounds are literally built of the sine wave combinations. The frequency of these is 55 Hz. That means it wobbles as many times per second, so one cycle repeats from one same point to another. The phase is actually a time measurement of the difference between the point in a cycle and its origin. This value is measured in degrees from 0 to 360. At this point the phase is 0 degrees, here it's 90, here is 180, 270, 360 and so on again. Moving one wave in time, we're actually shifting its phase relatively to another one. Let's have a listen to what happens in this case. When the 2 waves are phase aligned and we're summing them, it results in doubled amplitude, and we can hear twice as loud sound than each individually. And phase shift leads to the volume decrease. When the phase shift is 180 degrees and we are summing 2 waves, it results in zero amplitude or silence. That's called phase cancellation. And that is the phenomenon we must avoid when dealing with the kick and bass. So let's find out how to do the phase alignment of our sounds properly. Likewise, the first example, I've made the kick drum and here's what I came up with. In case of the trance music, the kick drum sound frequency is changing all the time. Again, for instance, this might be 40 Hz, 50, 60 and so on. On the other hand, the bassline consists of the same. In this example of a sharp key, it is 58 and 116 Hz respectively. So it's very important to adjust the kick drum tail the way we avoid phase cancellation on one frequencies, otherwise we're losing some lows, and try to avoid resonance spikes on another frequencies. And the exoscope will help us again. Any change of the pitch envelope results in a phase shift. So our goal is to change it by ear and by sight, the way we get a smooth and solid waveform on the exoscope, nice and whole kick drum sound and distinct thump of the bassline attack. And now I'm gonna show you one more secret. Sometimes working with the kick and bass we get a nice solo sounds, but still we may notice that something's wrong when we're playing them together. Quite possible it might happen due to the phase mismatch. Then we can just shift the whole bassline track in time a little bit. In Cubase I can do it like this. In this example, the shift of just 10 milliseconds results in a perfect smooth curve and very nice sound. Now I'm gonna EQ the kick drum. Usually the mids are decreased to get rid of these frequencies. Sometimes the click might be adjusted at the higher mids here. Sometimes the lows are boosted. Narrow bands might be cut out to give some space to another instrument, for instance a snare drum. In this example I've done all that with the help of amp envelope only. Let's have a look at that now. Again I've decreased the mids here to emphasize the lows, and here I found the sound I don't like and got rid of it just this way. Let's compare it to the reference again. the spectrum analyzer shows us a sharp slope here. Commonly the useful signal ends below the baseline fundamental 58 Hz of the A sharp in this example, and the kick drum ends up at around 40 Hz now. The lower sounds don't carry any useful information, we can't hear it at a certain note and we don't feel it as a pleasant thump in the chest. But physically the lower frequencies are carrying a lot of energy, so we better get rid of them to save this energy for the useful ones right here. So I'm gonna cut the lows with the Waveline EQ low-band filter. But as we are using any filter at the very low end and wanted artifacts occur. Look at this moment right here, when the kick drum ends and the next one begins. When I fire up the low-cut filter, we've got some fluctuations both after the end of the sample and actually before its origin. That's why it's essential to bounce the kick and bass. For that I'm gonna export into the WAV file, then cut out the necessary part precisely and set a short fade out to avoid unwanted clicks. In general, there are different opinions on the issue, and some artists believe that the true mastery lies in the very fine adjustment of the very low end of the spectrum. Once on a festival I've heard a track by my beloved Infected Mushroom, Never Ever Land. If we have a look at the spectrum analyzer, we'll see that the kick drum is playing all the way down to 0 Hz. On the dance floor it felt fucking amazing. Genius! Now I'm gonna slow down and proceed to the progressive sound. For the third reference I've chosen the collaboration of Zeiss and Sub-6 called Witchcraft. I've met Zeiss a couple of years ago and he greatly inspired me to spend more time working in my studio, so now I'm sharing the results with you. There are two different bass lines in this track, but I'm gonna show you one of them to illustrate the basic idea. Starting with the kick drum, let's find out what else we can do in the Sonic Academy Kick 2. In the right section here we've got 3 extra channels for the clicks. We can choose it from the preset library or load any sample we like and tweak its parameters. I've likely guessed the original click is number 12, we can see the spectrums of mine and the reference one are matching completely. When adding the click to the kick drum, it's essential to verify the phase match again. So let's turn the click waveform display here and zoom in to have a closer look. We can edit the click parameters, but I like how it sounds, so I've decided to keep it as it is and edited the sub-layer envelope to match the phase of the sub and the click. This time they don't match completely, but it's good for now cause the click is very short. The rest of the pitch envelope I've adjusted by ear and by eye checking for the phase match with the bassline. Now I'm gonna have a look at the amp envelope. In the kick 2 we can edit the sub and the click envelope separately. The click envelope is simple, I've just lowered the attack a bit to make it softer and shortened the click. On the sub layer I've also lowered the attack to separate it from the click, made the slope here to reduce the mids, and right here I've cut some frequencies I don't like, and also I've trimmed it with an EQ bit. And here I've got a smooth release again. Since our kick drum is long, it is overlapping with the first 16th of the bass completely, provided we have ensured a perfect phase match. So the amplitudes of the kick and bass are summing now in the low range of the spectrum and we hear the nice fat kick and clear and distinct first note of the bassline. That means first we make both of it softer, reducing the amplitude of the kick's release and reducing the velocity of the first note of the bassline, and then when they are summing we get a nice clear and fat sound at the low frequencies. Let's get to the bass now. Again I've tried to achieve the best dry sound with the synth only, tweaking cutoff and envelopes, and actually it sounds already nice. It's just a plain sawtooth again. I love the sound of different filter modes, that's why I've added the low pass 4 and daft filters in parallel, tweaked the envelopes and adjusted the phase, and added a pinch of distortion of course. Now let's compare it against the reference. Again, I'd like to emphasize that our goal is not to make an exact copy, but to learn how do certain plugins work, understanding their abilities and what sound we can actually achieve by using them. So let's get to the processing now. For the start I'm gonna add the LFO tool here to make our sidechain effect even smoother. Let's add an EQ now. I'm gonna lower the mids here to soften the attack. Cut this frequency I don't like. And then boost this range right here in between to compensate the cuts. That's how it sounds before and after EQing. In the original sound we can hear a nice crunch. It can be achieved with the distortion, so let's find out now how to do that. Looking at the exoscope we see a strange waveform instead of the common sawtooth. Usually this kind of a picture might be a result of any multiband processing, anything with a crossover inside. And the most famous multiband distortion is obviously the quadrophase, especially version 1. So now I'm gonna go back in time and open the old Cubase where I've got it. In many cases it works just fine with the default settings, but I advise you to play with the crossover, move these bands here and there and listen to the difference. Again, it's very helpful doing it both on the speakers and the headphones to find the best settings. Now I'm gonna bounce the bassline and get back to our project. Let's get to the final EQing now. First I've removed the frequencies we don't like, and now I'm gonna boost the ones that sound good. And for that I need a special EQ that gives a nice color to the sound, makes it in a tasty and musical way. There are lots of such plugins and I like SPL Bass Ranger. That's how it sounds before and after EQing. It's essential not to overdo it. Add just a little bit, compare your sound with the reference one and monitor the spectrum analyzer. Now, after all the processing is done, I'm gonna balance the sound, make it more consistent and solid throughout the whole spectrum. And for that I'm gonna use the compressor now. Let's have a look at the spectrum analyzer. That's how it looks like with the compressor on it. Bass volume is minus 3.1 dB. Let's now bypass the compressor. We see here that two lower harmonics are now like 2 dB louder, yet the overall volume is at the present level. That means I've just put back harmonics that stuck out. Let's have a look at the compressor settings now. I set the threshold level so that our signal is compressed for no more than 6 dB. Ratio setting is good at around 3 or 4, because I don't want to squash the signal too much. The attack and release settings are very important. We remember that 1/16th note is around 100 milliseconds. I want the compressor to work out each note, so I set the shortest release for it to have time to recover. Also, I want my initial transient of each note to pass through the compressor, so I set the attack value from 10 to 50 milliseconds, looking for the best setting by ear, listening to the click sound. This way I can make it more or less sharp and punchy. Also, I mix a bit of dry signal to make it sound more consistent. And finally, a special trick of the progressive is the pitch crusher effect. At lower values of distortion it gives a nice crispy sound at the high end. In the Fab Filter Saturn it's called Destroy. It's very important not to overdo it. The default plugin of your sequencer is also good. Let's compare it all together with the reference now. Sounds fantastic. So that's it for now. In the end, I'd like to say that all that I have just shared with you I have learned myself not so long ago. But all this knowledge was preceded by years of research and practice. And even without some of these skills, I have already released 2 albums and played it on many cool parties and festivals worldwide. Because music is the most important thing, so please make good music. I hope you find this video useful, so go on ahead and share it on the Facebook. You can also ask me any question or check out my music right here. Thanks for watching, I am Alexey Sonic Elysium, bye bye.